1, 2, 3, 4.
Welcome back to another Hospitality Podcast, episode 15.
Woo!
15 solid episodes, baby. Today's a special episode because not only do we have an amazing guest with us, we actually have
for this.
our first video recording. So now I can say viewers.
Now you can say
We got viewers.
I can't even correct you.
First time.
We've been correcting that for a while now.
I think that was my major goal for today, was making sure that when I say viewers, I actually can
Yeah, the camera.
have viewers.
Everybody look at the
Everybody
camera.
look at the camera.
This is the first time.
The first. It only took 15
It only
episodes.
took 15 episodes. And how many times are we going to have like an office moment where somebody says something, you just kind of look at it with the camera?
Oh, yeah. Now we're going to have to edit out video, too.
Yeah, I don't know if that's going to happen, so don't fuck up too much.
Chris has a legit job now.
Yeah, fuck.
Oh, man.
All right, so those of you who don't know, another Hospitality Podcast is hosted by myself, Angel, and Matthias, 3 current law enforcement officers, 2 of which are also United States veterans. Thank you, fellas, for your service.
Thank you.
And we started this podcast basically just to try and normalize the talk about mental health, men's mental health, involving first responders, military, dads, parents, everybody, because it's something that's still so stigmatized. We wanted to really be raw and have people know that there's people out there talking about these things. And I think the feedback we've gotten so far is huge.
Phenomenal.
We've gotten friends, family, strangers that have reached out and saying, thank you so much for talking about this. I know somebody that has listened to your podcast and it's helped them. I've listened to your podcast. It's helped me. It's given me a different perspective. So I think as of right now, I'd say our podcast is successful.
One thing that I have noticed is that one common value is that all of our friends keep coming on. Does that mean we're a bunch of fucked up individuals as friends too?
Yes. Well, we knew that. we knew that coming in.
That's not anything new.
It's funny. If we start making a list of people that we want to come on,
Checking it twice.
it'll be crazy about the amount of people.
We're able to
Find
go
out
on
who's
the amount
fucked
of
up or
friends.
not.
Exactly. The amount of
We're
friends
able
that
to finally-
this person's fucked up.
We're able to finally go on here and mark one of our guests that was on the future podcast.
He moves down.
Would you like to do the favor?
You move down. You move down to
Just go ahead and just click on your name. Go ahead and press the hype button. We did it.
So I feel like at this point, especially because we're on video and people are kind of probably just staring at Dan and going, who the fuck's this guy? We should introduce today's guest, Dan. Dan?
Hi.
Are we just gonna go with Dan? We're not gonna go with Dirty Dan. Or
He said he wants to be.
He did say
He's gonna be Dan.
He's like nothing
Okay.
but
You know.
Dan.
Okay, so we can edit out the other part.
I mean, he's Dirty Dan to us, but they need to understand why he's called Dirty Dan.
No,
It's
we
not
don't gotta
dirty.
explain.
That's his nickname.
That is his nickname, but we don't gotta explain it. Let him explain it if he wants to explain it at some point. He wants to be referred as Dan. Dan, it is.
So Dan,
Dan.
tell us something about you. Give us some insight into Dan.
Dan.
Paramedic, 17 years doing it.
He's not used to this. He's not used to the spotlight. Here you go. Look at
Yes,
this.
I'm not used to having to testify in front of a microphone.
Don't consider it as a testification. Testification.
Testimony.
Testifying.
Testimony. It's funny that we fucked it up, but the Duolingo's got it right. They use proper terminology.
Rightfully so.
All right, so you've been a paramedic for how long? 17 years?
Medic for 15 of them.
Medic for 15.
Yeah.
So those are the people who don't know, what's the difference between a paramedic and a medic? Or an EMT or...
Medics go to school for an extra year. We learn advanced life support. We do more medications, airway management, stuff like that.
So do you think having that education, obviously it's helped you career-wise, do you think it has helped in, because everything is mental health, do you think it's giving you more like into the mental health world where it's you've seen more because of
Working, you get a lot of experience with mental health and individuals with mental health crisis and issues.
So tell us about a little bit of that. Tell us a little bit about the training you have as far as going into the mental health as a first responder before we kind of get into you.
We should spend more time being taught to manage those people better.
To manage people in crisis?
In crisis.
Okay.
Like, It's really on the job training. You know, you just learn over years and years of how do you de-escalate? How do you try and calm somebody down who's in an irrational state and stuff like that?
See, I don't like that you guys didn't highlight the fact that I said people in crisis. Like, come on, that's fucking pretty good, man. I'm just saying, wake the fuck up.
So it's like
He's using the right terms.
See, you know what I'm saying?
You read the memo.
Damn it.
The monster
You know
is
what I'm
running out.
saying? We try to sound smart, like we know what we're talking about right now.
Well, we don't know what we're talking about, but Dan definitely knows what he's talking about.
Well, at least try to study the guest, you know.
But I feel like
No.
that's something we've talked about as well, is especially with police, we don't have a lot of training in this. But
Yeah.
this is probably
It's the
one
same
of,
with us.
one of the things that we see more often than not is trying to help somebody that is in a mental crisis.
And like I could tell you wholeheartedly, in the county, they're doing a big push for like EMS and police to have a lot more shared training type understanding. So you guys know when it's appropriate when you call us as to what the expectation should be and vice versa. So that's, I mean, it's really not an issue with the cops I work with all the time, but
Well, it's you get a good feel for the people you work around, work with, how those cops work, and same with vice versa. They understand how you work, how you may deal with certain situations.
Yeah.
It's a beneficial thing.
But as a whole, I mean, there's definitely more that could and should be done to get everybody on board with understanding people who have issues, and you have to handle those issues in a much more calm, relaxed way sometimes. You can't get like emotional and upset and make a bad situation worse.
Let me ask you a question, because you started off with talking about like other people, right? We always focus on the job, like our job as police officers to respond to calls, right? Without the calls, we wouldn't have a job. And essentially, same thing with you guys, with the medics and the firefighters and whatever else. You started off with talking about the mental health of other people that we're responding to and not having enough training. Absolutely. What is your thoughts, or what are your thoughts, when it comes down to like ourselves? Obviously we have talked about this in previous episodes that we don't get enough training as well to handle our own mental health, less alone helping other people. Not to mention, I think that there is that stigma and there's all these complications because we won't have mental health issues really until we start answering other people's mental health issues and seeing the things that we see in our profession.
Yeah, I mean, you guys all did your EMT class, so you did the well-being of the EMT basic. It's the same exact when you take the paramedic class, same PowerPoint slideshow presentation as the EMT. And you guys, I think, get additional training. My understanding from you guys is like they spend a little bit more time in the academy talking about the importance of don't take work home. If you have any issues, reach out before it becomes a bigger issue and all that stuff. With us, it's, again, most of it's on the job.
Do you think that a lot of that stuff is or could be expanded to a different capacity? Like, for example, you talk about on-the-job training. I think that our FTO program is and should be the most important part of the police career. Like the beginning is really setting the foundation. A lot of the stuff that we do in the academy, information-wise, it is so much information that you're doing a brain dump at the end of it. You got taught how to handle this or how to do that, and you remember, definitions and whatever else. But I believe that the job or the officer starts performing a little bit better, when you're starting to answer some of the calls on the job training.
Yeah.
How do we get some of that on the job training mental health help rather than, like you said, don't take your work home with you. Like, you really don't know what the hell they're talking about.
Which is easier said than done.
Right, exactly. Until you realize.
So when I started out, I openly said, like, these are strangers. So it's easy to dissociate what you see at work as, I didn't do this to them. I can only try and make it better.
Can typical people.
So it actually sounds like what what Dr. Haynes said last week with not taking somebody else's baggage.
Right.
Like, that's not my baggage to carry. So that's what it sounds like you're saying is like, these are people that I don't know. They're going through wherever they're going, but that's not my baggage to carry. Like, once I'm done treating them, that's it.
I mean, one of the things I tell new people is you're going to see on rare occasions people at the happiest day of their life, like, if you deliver a baby or something. But you're also going to see people at the worst day of their life or the last day. And you need to understand you're not going to fix everything, and it's not on you what the outcome is. Your job is to just point A to point B, try and make them better or keep them stable so the hospital can fix them. So the hard part for my job is people aren't well prepared because, like we talked about, like we don't get full like training and stuff. The difference between us with our FTO and you guys is when I'm doing, mental health in my paramedic program, I'm doing clinical rotations at a psych facility, CPAP, and all those places. So you're learning, and then you're doing like, very abridged like residency program where you go through that unit of the hospital. So you get a little bit more firsthand while you're learning, but it's still, it's only a year program, most paramedic programs. So it's like 3 days in mental health.
I think one of the things a lot of people struggle with the most is the fact is disassociating, like not taking the baggage home. I know something I always struggled with for a while, especially like heavy, deep calls. And if it hits close to home, i.e. you have kids and you saw a child die, or a domestic with a child and you have a child, it just kind of pops in, or an abuse. And I use children because I think children are like the most common forms that people see and it sticks with them. But again, for our sake, we see a lot of people in a mental health crisis, severe anxiety, bipolar, a manic state. And, we turn around at the end of the day, like, well, I have felt anxiety, and you feel like you're that person. I feel like that putting that association together in your head makes it very difficult for you to not bring that baggage home, because now you have to remind yourself that what you saw and what you dealt with is not what you are dealing with. It's not what you saw. But I think too often we bridge the two together very, very quickly, and it becomes stuck in our head that, oh, I'm this person. I have this problem, or I'm just like that person I dealt with. Look what they have. They're an alcoholic, or they're in CPAP, or in a psych ward, or attempting suicide, and that just kind of sticks in our head. So how do we better disassociate? How do we because we've said, like, you do a good job of this, Dan, of that disassociation. You have like a wall. It's just, okay, I'm done. It didn't happen. A lot of people don't have that. How do we teach somebody? How do we give somebody the tools?
I mean, for me, it was just trial and error. Like, I remember when I first started working, the guy had the same birthday as my dad, collapsed in his driveway. I remember when I left the hospital, I said, I'm sorry I couldn't do more. I'm sorry for your loss. And my brother's a New York City police officer, and he did his time in very busy areas. I remember saying to him, like, oh, I apologize to the family. And he just looked at me and he's like, take this whatever way you want to take it, but like, you can't feel that way. Like, you won't be able to do your job if you're going to take that baggage.
Here's a question too, because I and obviously you're one of our closest friends. So you speak truth and the professionalism, and then you talk to us like family and like friends. Right now, the audience, right, viewers, listeners, they kind of some of the questions that I've been getting, or we've been getting on the social media, is this stuff like typical? I hate using the word normal, but is it typical for somebody to be able to disassociate these things? Is it typical or normal for somebody to be able to adapt, especially so quickly, to a job? Because I can tell people all the time, you go to combat, what's going to happen in a combat zone? People die. People lose their limbs. You're walking around bombs and, Taliban shooting at you and whatever else. It's inevitable. Same thing with the police job. People underestimate that. And I know that you can kind of vouch for me in the military aspect. People go, oh, man, military guys have it so much worse. Absolutely not. I feel like, personally speaking, cops have it so much worse.
It's a different thing.
It is a different thing, but I think a lot of people try to bridge both of them together. And when you're a cop, you're going to these calls every single day, and you're going from call to call to call. Now, mind you might not be going to these calls every single day, but there are days where you just have it. It doesn't stop. You have a shooting, you have a stabbing, you have a baby, you have a drowning, you have a domestic with a gun. It just seems like a shit show sometimes. How can people just expect, or how do we expect, or let's maybe talk about from seniority point of view, how do we expect these young kids who don't have this mental health training, they don't have the life experience, they didn't get a really good FTO trainer, or somebody who's willing to give them good advice like maybe you're giving, and let them understand, like, hey, this is something you can't do? Because quite frankly, like, I connect more with Chris on this one, but I do associate, and we talked about this last night actually. I know he's pretty good with disassociation like you, but I will put myself in their shoes and go, wow, like, that person was a dad. Wow, that person was a husband. That person is a cop. Yep. That person has done this. So you almost like carry that burden, which it's not like I want to do it. And I would say between police and military, I have 15 years or so of experience, and I still can't disassociate myself. Do you think that's just like a weakness trait, or I don't.
No, I think that's an
It
individual.
makes you human.
Yeah, that's an individual thing. Like again, there's things that may bother you that don't bother me, but there's stuff that bothers me that you're probably like, whatever, man.
Yeah.
Like, why are you letting that get to you? So
Don't get me wrong, things bother me, but at least our job, it's a lot more close-knit. You work with the same people 24, 32 hours straight. You work overnight, you might be able to rack out on the chairs. You sleep next to somebody, the chair next to you for every Monday night, let's say. And, you obviously talk to your partners and our job is different from yours in one regard. You guys get stuck having to stay on the bodies. You guys get stuck having to just sit on it. Our job is we either transport or we don't. If we transport, it's not us thinking this is somebody's father.
yeah.
It's us saying, okay, go through the ABCs, go through the protocols, go through what you need to do to get the patient from point A to point B.
Still, I feel
So
like
we're
sometimes
able to more easily. And the dumbest thing they taught us in our medic class, our EMT classes, treat the patient like it's a mannequin. And it's like, in certain regards, yes. But in other regards, it's still a person.
Yeah, it's a human.
Right.
Yeah, of course.
But I think the message is more the mental aspect. You treat it like a mannequin, you're not going to get that mental
block.
attachment, and you're right. You're able to block it out, but right, you don't. At the same point, you don't want to just say, "Oh, they're not an existing person," because it's what they are. But that's why I feel like you guys almost have it a little harder in that aspect because you're the direct lifeline for that person if you're doing the transport. So you're sitting there working your balls off, if you're trying to put in an IV. I don't know much about medic stuff because I only passed my EMT course 8 years ago. But you're the one thing that is this person's really needing. And to me, I would look at that and I would almost feel more pressure, more
But that makes it easier for you to separate the humanity situation from what you just need to do.
But to your point, when you're saying that we have it worse because we do get to sit on the body, not only do we get to sit on the body,
see the families.
you guys, exactly.
Yep.
You guys leave. We see the families. We see their reactions.
Well, and then thinking, how did this happen?
That's when
what did it lead to? What's going to come after this?
But that's when people like you guys that can't disassociate start carrying that baggage because you start seeing the family. And don't get me wrong, stuff like that bothers me. I told you guys I had a case this summer that happened to me, and I saw the family and I saw their reaction once we told the family, like, hey, sorry, your family member passed, right? And you see that reaction, and I said it yesterday. Mm-hmm. Just that alone, I was like, my mind went somewhere. I was like, I don't know how I will handle that. Like, it was a sibling that was lost. The siblings are there. And then when we told them that the sibling passed, it's like their reaction. I was like, I could very well see myself reacting to something like that if it's one of my siblings. I may seem like I don't have feelings, but I do have some. Not many, but I do have some feelings.
Enough.
Just enough feeling, to make me a little bit human.
I mean, and hold on, because I also want to reiterate, it's not like we're only cops for a year or 2 years. We do have a little bit of time, especially in this little round table here between us four. I would say there's probably what. I know it's a rectangle. I'm just saying between us, not the table itself, gentlemen.
Matthias is playing seniority right now. He said, I got T on the J. What's up?
He got sworn in first. I thought you would be sworn in first based on alphabetical order.
Not T on the J, but a lot of the cops that we've been talking to are, fresh 1, 2, 3 years out of the academy. And we all went into the police, military, EMTs or whatever in our paramedic program in our early 20s, and I went into the Marine Corps when I was 19 years old. So how old were you when you went to the Air Force?
I was 26.
26, so 26. A little bit older. But at the same time, you think about it and you're like, wow, this stuff didn't really bother me in the beginning. I think maybe I was able to compartmentalize things a lot better in the military and a lot better in the beginning of my police career. And now it's kind of like where it's like, all right, well, yeah, sure, you got 15 years of experience of dealing with this compartmentalizing and numbing yourself or whatever the terminology is, versus the guys who...
Emotional anesthesia, according to the classes I've had to take.
Hey, that's a very good terminology.
That's the term that I learned in one of the classes I had to take.
Really? So that's a real term.
Emotional anesthesia.
I've heard you using that term, and I'm thinking that's a
I didn't
Dan
invent
thing.
it.
I thought that was a
I'm
Dan
not that
thing.
smart.
That was
I
Dr.
actually
Dan.
thought that was your thing.
Dr. Dan. I like it.
No, but I wouldn't say that you're just better at it earlier in your career. I would just say the longer you do something, the more and more you can't just ignore things if that's what you're doing.
Yeah.
And that's that's my biggest concern is that, yes, you get the training. Yes, you get the FTO. Yes, you get the mental health class, the refresher. A lot of this stuff doesn't bother most of us in the beginning of our career. It appears that the people that we hear are affected, when we were affected, when I was affected, is usually like now. You know, you have children of your own, you have a wife of your own, you have your home of your own, you have your babies of your own, like, you know, brand new little babies, you know, and it's like, oh, now everything is really affecting you.
That's because you start humanizing the situations.
Right.
Again,
You relate
start
it to your own self.
Exactly. You start attaching yourself to whatever it is that you have in front of you. So like now, like we were saying, you see a kid.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, they're vulnerable. They can't defend themselves. So that right away, you have kids, I have kids, right? You have nieces and nephews. So you start thinking now, wow, I can see something like this happening to me. And you start now engaging in that. That can happen to me too. Yeah, no shit. Anything can happen to you too, but it doesn't have to.
I think that's the thing is you not just say ignore it, but you can. It's almost like what we talked about, the anxiety, right? Because that's what almost sparks your anxiety. So one thing I've done with being able to disassociate is now I do well with it. And I can have these calls and I'm like, damn, that sucks. Like, you know, work through it. I'm like, all right, well, that's not me. It's not my kids. It's not my future. Could it happen? Yeah. I mean, anything could happen, right? But that's one of the things I've continuously had to do is instead of fighting it when that anxiety spikes of, oh my God, what if this was my kid? What would I feel like? Because then you'll feel it inside start to race. Because I said, yeah, well, how would I handle it? And I kind of just calm myself down and this is probably what I do. And I go, okay, well, that's done.
Well,
and then I move on to the next thing. I don't hold on to that specific feeling to keep it in your head and the turmoil and things like that.
But even in the academy, remember when they gave us a scenario, like I was one of those that wanted to go to the precinct where I live, right? And one of the scenarios that was given to us was like, well, if you have an active shooter in your kid's school and you see your kid on the floor, like, will you be able to bypass your kid? And in my mind, I'm like, fuck no, I'm not going to bypass my kid.
Yep.
But if that's what the situation calls for, you may have to bypass your kid and go neutralize the threat because more lives are going to be at stake if you don't do it. So then I was like, do I really want to experience that? So no, I don't want to be at the precinct where I live because I don't want to have that scenario. But if I now think in retrospect, I probably would want to be in that precinct because I know how I would respond to something like that. But I would take care of my child. It's selfish to say it, but it's my kid. You know?
I think that's like one of those questions, they ask sometimes in the PD, and you got to give a certain answer, which is, no, I'd bypass.
You guys remember that question, right?
Yeah,
like when they say
you got to step over. I remember
there's not one person in that room
Yeah.
that would be like, yeah, fuck
no, but a lot of
kid,
the guys
I'm
that didn't have kids did say that. You know, they're like, oh, yeah.
You didn't have kids at the time?
I didn't, but I knew.
I had kids, and I go, fuck no, I wouldn't be able to
I remember I
bypass.
said that. I was like, yeah, absolutely not. I don't have kids, but no, there's no way I could step over and be like, all right, bud, see ya.
How many people said yes? How many? Do you remember?
I don't remember.
There was a bunch of people like, yeah, I have to go neutralize the threat because you're thinking.
But most of those people didn't have kids.
Right.
Now they have kids. I would love to hear their response.
Exactly.
Now when they have kids,
Which is why I think that a lot of people, including
both from that. Like if you have people in the academy, the ones that said yes, if you get them back in 5-6 years, and then for whatever training is like, hey, you now have kids. Remember this question now. Just
has your response changed?
Which some are probably going to go, no, my response is changed because they don't want to now leave like a record or whatever else. But you know what I mean?
What are your thoughts on that? Like, I think that things don't start bothering you until your coping mechanisms don't work anymore. So a lot of my coping mechanisms in the beginning for stress and things before I even learned about them were going to the gym, right? But when I was going through my severe anxiety moments and stuff, you guys remember, I lost 25 pounds. I really wasn't eating. I wasn't going to the gym. I couldn't really get in my mind of why is this happening? What's going on? I've never felt these emotions. I've never felt these feelings. I've never had all these thoughts going crazy. So I was trying to fix that problem. So I was like reading and I was walking and I was doing yoga and shit I've never done in my life, And then when I talked to Dr. Dan, and he was like, can you imagine, not this Dr. Dan, the other Dr. Dan, the other Dr. Dan.
Every time he says that, I get very confused.
Not this Dr. Dan. The other Dr. Dan.
He is our family doctor. If there's anything, something goes wrong, Jen's like, who we call him? Like, oh, Dan.
Yeah, Dan.
Hey, Dan, my kids, every time.
Dr. Dan Jr., all right? So the other Dr. Dan said, could it be that you're not really, because you're like, oh my, I said, what's going on? Like, I don't go to the gym like I used to. I'm not eating food. I'm not really like drinking caffeine. I'm not eating sugar. He's like, could you probably think that maybe your energy is being spent somewhere else? And I go, 100%. I'm spending 2.5 hours reading books. Like, who the fuck is that? And where's this guy been at my whole life that could have helped me out so much in school and in the academy and everything else? So my biggest thing is, how do we help people understand that maybe the things that worked for you then won't work for you now or in the future?
So again, like my experiences over the years is, they have a critical incident team they'll send if there's like a bad call. But most of the real conversation takes place when you shut the door in the office. And then you say what you need to say and you deal with what you need to deal with.
So you talk about it.
Yeah. But nobody wants to talk about it with a stranger.
True.
So like I'm lucky enough to have like guys like you as friends, where if I have a shit call and it actually really affects me, I call Angel, Chris, you, handful of other people.
Do you think that most people would, though? Would they call their friends?
Yes.
Or
I think we're seeing that more now than we were even two to 5 years ago. I think we're definitely seeing a more increase in people
because
reaching out
it's
to
becoming
each other.
it's becoming more acceptable nowadays.
Look at the answer he gave us last night. He said, I learned to deal with it, right? I learned to deal with it, and you just suck it up and you keep trucking forward. That's a lot of old school mentality stuff.
But that's because well,
you're not old.
For some people, it works for them.
We're about the same age, so we're not old. But you said that
how old are you?
40.
How old are you?
40.
Not old.
So you said people in your life have told you at some point in time that you just have to suck it up, right? So you have that mentality of, hey, I just got to suck it up.
Yes, but I mean, that only gets you so far sometimes. I always said early on in my career, it's a stranger, so who cares? And then you go and it's your friend dead in his driveway. So that's where you learn how to really deal with things.
But yeah, it's just, I get what you're saying. And in their cases, when they're attaching themselves, again, it's kind of impossible to not have some sort of feeling, because that is a human being. And it may be not your family member, maybe not your friend, but that's somebody's brother, that's somebody's dad, that's somebody's uncle. You get what I'm saying? So that's a human being.
But that's where I think, again, acknowledging that is how you overcome that attachment, is understanding, hey, listen, it's okay for me to be a little upset about this. I don't have to shut this out. It's okay for me to be upset about it, sad about it, to have these thoughts of, I don't want to call it like depression, but being sad or down because of what you just dealt with, and realizing that person is a human and stuff like that. But then, right, at some point within that, you've acknowledged it, you felt it for a few minutes. It's almost like when they say you can get mad for something for about 5 minutes and then let it go, because anytime spent past that, you're just holding on to that feeling because you want to.
You know how hard that is, though,
Very
to
difficult.
let go of things
Very
that
difficult.
fast. And I know this for a fact because we took a drive to Brooklyn earlier, and I was a little pissed about something that happened earlier in the day, and it happened, I would say, a few hours, and I was still freaking fired up.
So that's the one thing, like my wife and I talk about, is give yourself 5 minutes. Be as mad as you want to be. After that 5 minutes, you need to let it go, because all you're doing is taking the time away from you, because you're not going to change it. You're not going to change what happened. You're not going to change the outcome. Be mad about it for 5 minutes, then say, okay, where do I go from here?
That is such a mature thing to do.
I've taken that into this job, and it's
The
not
problem is
easy.
that's so hard to do.
I'm not saying like 5 minutes is, you set a 5 minute timer. Give yourself some time. Give yourself some time.
This guy was pissed when we left. He was pissed when we got there. He was pissed a little bit when we were coming back. I was like, bro, You let this shit go? What are you doing?
Right, but that's the purpose. Is don't let yourself or make yourself hold on to something just because it's the emotion you're feeling
it ruins
for a
it.
prolonged amount of time.
It ruins the moment.
You're just and you're just taking away from yourself in the same instance.
My wife said it the other day. I was upset at something that happened, and she goes, "Are you going to come on the walk?" And I said, "No, I'm not fucking going." And then they got back, and my daughter and her and the dogs and everybody was all happy and all relaxed, and I was still tense. And I was like, "She's like, we got to really work on that." And I was like, "You're right. You're absolutely right. You got to work on it. I'm just not ready." I can acknowledge that I was upset at something, and she made me upset about something, and I just couldn't let it go, And as much as I read a book, it's called Letting Go, and it was a lot of different concepts and good stuff. Let it go. A little Frozen. And I just could not let that go.
Do you want to build a snowman?
No, I don't want to build a fucking snowman. I don't want to go for the walk. I don't want to do shit. It's crazy.
So the book was basically talking about how to let things go.
Yeah, it literally talks about. It doesn't just talk about thoughts. It talks about cancer survivors. It talks about childhood trauma. It talks about arguments you've had with a loved one. It really does break down things, and what you just said, or what Chris said, it really does end up just aggravating you so much more, which makes me believe that instead of you having a clear mind through time, you're letting your thoughts get kind of cloudy, and instead of you going, all right, I need to do some deep breathing exercises, I need to let a little time pass, things are going to be better. You're almost like purposely sticking yourself in that moment. And I heard it, on social media, which is why we got that button, right? I heard somebody say it on social media where it's like, all right, well, anxiety sometimes is almost like addicting. A person who has like certain feelings, it's almost like they're addicting, to be feeling this way. They don't want to let it go, and I could definitely see that because you're used to that feeling. You're used to what that feels like. You're used to how it reflects on you and how it makes you feel. But you do feel like shit. I don't want to argue with my wife. I don't argue with my daughter. I don't want to miss out on these beautiful moments because I was upset about something. I couldn't be mature enough to let it go. So I don't know what is some kind of advice that you would give, let's say a younger paramedic on things that they're going to be facing, let's say in their next 10, 15 years of their career.
I mean, like in regards to what you were just talking about getting angry and stuff like that.
Or letting calls affect them in a certain way.
You can't really give somebody advice because everybody has to, in a certain regard, figure that out on their own. Like there's no class everybody can take to say, okay, so when you deal with a bad call, here's how you decompress and get rid of all of this baggage. I tell them all the same thing. Just focus on your job and that's it. Like you have a job to do. And that's why I said before, like for us, it's easier. We walk into those chaotic scenes and it's like, okay, do what you need to do. And then that's it. Like
you said, if you need to transport, you transport. If you don't have to transport, you leave.
So what?
That's the extent of your exposure at that point.
And I'll also say this, like 2020 was horrible for work. Horrible. That was, a real wake-up call. And I never realized how bad it was until I worked with one of my friends. And I was like scratching my head. I was like, why does Joe always say this? Before we take the patient out, like he'd tell the family, like, it's, you want to, take a minute with your loved one because they're not going to be allowed in the ER. Yeah. They're not going to be allowed to hold their hand when, something happens. And that's when I was like, wow, like I never thought of that. And like, people like my friend Joe, Steve. Steve was fantastic with these things.
So I actually asked Dr. Hain, not this one here, the actual doctor, the same question, which was during COVID. It was so bad with people having to isolate, people couldn't communicate.
I didn't see my family for 3 months.
Right? So and I asked her this question, and it seems like for you it was kind of similar. Do you think during COVID and after COVID is when you see that people want to start normalizing mental health and actually taking action to better their mental health?
I mean, before COVID, people I knew would do what they needed to do. It
was there. Yes. Mental health has always been there, which we spoke about too.
I think as a whole, overall, people are realizing that the mental health problem in this country, and it's not just like, the EDPs at work and stuff like that, but like overall, the mental health problem in this country needs to be kind of figured out. Like, how do you address this? Like,
do you think it's a cultural problem?
100%.
kind of like how we just raise our our children and what we prioritize as a not just a Western culture, but as an American culture. I think we prioritize the wrong things, and even ingredients in our foods, between red dye, things like that. Like these are things that are proven to have
consequences on the body.
Yup, and it changed the chemical balance in brains. Like you guys know, in our kids, we don't give them Red 40. Here's when we do, they go fucking ape shit. And now my youngest can't have anything blue, like there was like a blue 12. And we have people like, oh, you guys are crazy. I'm like, no, but we're not. Because it literally, even down to medicine, if he has that, the, I don't know what it's, the penicillin or whatever with red dye, so it's pink, so it's flavored, he can't have it. Because the kid it turns him into an absolute machine, which you guys know my kid's already a taco truck. So he doesn't need anything else. Like, he doesn't need a steroid to make him stronger.
Yeah.
But again, I think from health to material items in our country to even how we work. How many hours a week do you work?
Scheduled?
That's just that's
recently.
The answer
for the last few months, 80 hours a week scheduled.
Right, and that's fucking insane.
It's double
what you're supposed to do.
That is insane. But even a 40-hour work week, right? Because I work 12s. You do 10s, right? From your tour, and you do 8s. But you're still gone at 5 days a week. Yeah. So, and then you're really only getting 3-4 hours with your kids or kid and your wife or your dogs or playing video games or relaxing. Yeah. So less than what?
It's like a third.
15% or something like that of your day you're actually spending for you.
Well, depending on how old the kid is too. Like, obviously your kids are a little older, but the older they are, the later they can stay up. But if they're young kids, they're usually in bed. What time are your kids in bed? Like
if
6
they
o'clock.
Go to bed.
Well, if they go to bed.
What happened today? It's fucking chaos.
Go to bed anytime soon. You need a blow dart to get them to go to bed tonight.
7 o'clock at night, most kids are going to bed. So if you get home at 4 o'clock,
but then you're up at 5 in the morning too.
Right. So that's what I'm saying. You don't see them. You only really see them. Let's say if you get out of work at 3, which is a pretty good scenario that I have. You're home by like 3:30, 4 o'clock. If it's 7 o'clock, I'm not very good at math, but that sounds like 3 hours before they got to go to bed.
Yeah.
And that's not very helpful. You'd be proud of me because last week when we were talking to your cousin, I interrupted him and I said I got to get a notepad or something, and so instead I wrote it down so I wouldn't forget. I wanted to touch on something that you guys were talking about with the COVID response and you not seeing your family for 3 months. So let's talk about some of the things we said a little bit ago. All right, so Chris and I carry certain burdens and we want to get better at it and whatever else. So we compare some of the things that we've seen to what we get. Let's talk about COVID, how, people were dying. There were so many people dying, right, after contracting, is that what it is, contracting COVID. And then all of a sudden people are like, oh my God, if I get COVID, I'm going to die. There was a lot of anxiety around
mass
this.
Hysteria.
So, there was like mass hysteria. People were like, oh my God, I can't get COVID, which is why people were double masking and putting this shit over their head and acting crazy, right? I understand the response and that you're having right now, especially in your field. But think about the normal, typical, everyday.
So the COVID thing, I just brought it up because I'll be honest, like one of the low points in my career was Thanksgiving 2020. It was just a rough day. I'm working already, so it's not like I'm spending time with my family. And it was just a rough day with one call in particular where there was 2 patients and we had to figure out which one we were going to intubate because only one of them could get intubated. And, JJ of all people called me up because he sent me a text message like, oh, how's work going? I'm like, fuck this job. And he's like, dude, what's going on? He called me up. And I told him, like, it's just been a rough, stretch the last few months. And like today was just like my breaking point. Like, I'm just done putting on Tyvek suits. I'm done with all of this bullshit at this point.
So what'd you do to work through that? Because I think that's probably a feeling that a lot of people feel continuously, especially with our jobs. What was the way that you worked through that?
Finished my shift, came home, got some rest that I needed because, that's another thing. When are you most agitated? When you don't eat, when you don't sleep, when you're cold, when you're soaking wet.
Yeah, we all just stared at Angel.
They know that all too well.
And again, like, people have bad days. None of us are heroes. None of us are superheroes. Like, you have a bad day for a bad day. Like, it is what it is.
Hold on. We were just saying a minute ago, this is Deadpool. This is Thor, Iron Man. We never got a chance to pick out your superhero.
Halfway to Professor X.
I'll take it. I like it.
I like that. All right, that's cool. I like that.
But, you
So
know,
much for our
how
superheroes.
did I decompress? Well, it's just the fancy terms. How did I decompress after that? I came home, I got rest. You know, I saw my family, you know,
played Call of
that
Duty.
weekend. Probably we did some drops, you know, and
Warzone.
that's
But
it. Like,
I think that's one of the things that people underestimate. Again, when you go back to the time that you have, because due to our work weeks and the stress, there's not enough, especially with families, or when you have the lack of being able to see your family. Nobody in our field, I don't want to say nobody, a lot of people in our field don't have the extracurricular activity time where they want to go, okay, let me do something. And it's something as stupid as dropping into Warzone with a bunch of your buddies just to and you'll talk about work.
Dude, the gyms were closed. Everything was closed.
Warzone was the best thing that happened in
That's when I built my gym.
Pizza,
During
pizza,
COVID.
Red Bulls, candy, Warzone. Yeah, I mean, same thing. We got a pool, and we built a little inside the garage gym. You couldn't do anything. Everything was closed.
I mean, for me, my saving grace is when I'm exhausted, I come home, and it's not like, you know, again, go back to JJ. Him and my other buddy from college were in a group
Shout out
text
to
messages.
JJ's a legend.
JJ is a legend.
And like they were joking, like Dan's not replying. You know, he's probably doing mouth to mouth on whatever, like at work or something like that. So I smart ass replied when I woke up the second time this morning after last night, and I smart ass replied back, "No, I don't have kids, so I slept in."
Fair enough. Fair enough.
One for Dan.
So like in that regard, I don't have the how do I balance family. You guys have to figure all that out. You know, for me, that didn't happen. So it's one of those things where, you know. Again, you talk to your friends at work, and that's typically how we work through our issues with work.
One thing
we keep it in house just because we could relate. You try and explain to some. Sorry,
no, you're good. You're good.
You know, you try and explain to like a stranger or like a family member that's never had any concept. I mean, if I ever really was messed up, I could always call my brother. It's not like he would be like, "Dude, get your shit together." And there have been times he, was like, "All right, I'll be right back." He goes, gets a couple of things when something happened at work. He tells my mom and dad, like, "We're going to be in the backyard. Don't come out." And he'll be like, "Here you go. Here's a beer. Get it out of your system." And I think that's like the other thing. Like if it bothers you, you just have to get it out of your system. Like as if you just ignore it, it's.
But that's the thing. It's like, how do you get it out of your system, right? For you, in your situation, it's your brother. Obviously, you guys just bonding. However it is that you guys bond, that's how you get it out of your system. Matthias probably goes to the gym to get it out of his system.
Obviously, I don't go to the gym.
He probably drops, right? Let's say on Call of Duty. I'm not saying that this is what actually happens. I'm just saying like, just your way may not be their way, and their way may not be your way. So that's an individual thing as to how to get it out of your system. And people need to do some self-reflection, which we were talking about earlier, and figure out what works for them. Because what works for me doesn't work for you guys.
But that's what I was saying before. That's why there can never be like one class everybody takes.
Yeah.
Like everybody's different. Listen, I'm just fortunate that, I didn't like bury my feelings in a bottle. That's why, like, when I'm at work and we have these drunks we take all the time, who am I to judge them?
But I feel like that's one of the reasons why we're doing all this is because that's too often what we see is that people will bury themselves in a bottle or in drugs or
that just makes it worse. You're just doing a downward spiral at that point.
That makes it worse, but for the person that's doing
it numbs it in the moment.
They don't even notice, right?
They don't realize what's happening, which it is making it worse. But in their mind, it's actually they're having a short-term tricks and short-term solution, and it just worsens what is actually happening to them at the time. They just can't realize what's actually happening.
I mean, I had a buddy who went down that road, and I'm happy he doesn't drink anymore. And I had no idea how bad it was.
Yeah.
And, we worked together, and somebody made a comment like, "Well, you ignored this problem because you guys are friends." And I'm like, you think if I knew about this problem, like, I would have ignored it because we're friends? Like, I would never in a million years want my friend to go through that.
Yeah. I'm very grateful. Today we got an opportunity to go to Brooklyn and to talk at a church. And he took the trip with me. And I think the coolest part about it, because now I've been reflecting about that whole moment, we had about 40-something people there. It was me giving a talk about faith and how God has helped me out. And I was asking questions. There's a lot of kids. And I was asking questions. And one of the most interesting thing was, I talked to this little girl. I was like, "What's something that scared you?" Right? And she goes, "The dark." And I go, "Okay." I said, "Is this dad?" And she's like, "Yeah, it's daddy." So that's mom and her sisters. And I go, "Why are you scared of the dark?" She goes, "Because I don't know what's behind me. I don't know what's going on." And then throughout the time, I said, raise your hand if you've ever been scared of the dark. And I'm very grateful that the adults also played the game. Pretty much all of them raised their hand, right? And I asked other kids, I go, are you scared of the dark? They're like, no, not really. I said, why not? Because there's nothing there. So I go, but she clearly thinks there's something there, which is why she's scared. Because I just use an analogy like what happens, a lot of us turn the light off when we were younger. We run down the hallway really fast or whatever. And, of course, all the kids are laughing and joking. And then I said, it took, and even then I don't know because I'm not going to be there for her to see her reaction next time she flickers the lights off. But there was such a cool presence of so many kids and adults. They go, it's okay to be scared of the dark. Remember that? They're like, it's okay to be scared of the dark, but there's nothing there. Just pray. And this little girl goes, I said, how can we help this? And she goes, you can pray. And I was like, oh my God, like that was such a beautiful thing. But it took a bunch of other young kids almost like explain to her, you have nothing to be scared of, that everything's going to be okay, that you could just pray and, go to your room, everything will be okay. Right now, you said that we are in a profession where these things come up and we react to them and we got to get better at it and whatever else. But what I realized by social media and this podcast and the amount of support. Thank you. I forgot. If you want to press it one time, go ahead. Anytime social media, we get the hype button. So when we check the social media,
the hype is real. That's what should come after that.
How many times we open up the social media, or maybe either Chris checked it or Angel checked it or I checked it, and they'll screenshot it and send it to the group chat, just to see what people are saying. That oh my God, like that really touched me. We had a guy the other day from Arizona, Arkansas.
The one I sent,
the one you sent,
because I have it up because I wanted to touch on it from before. But
so when we started this, that's what we set out to do. Was we wanted to reach people that we wouldn't normally reach, right? Obviously, we have our friends group, and we've spoke about multiple different situations that we've been in where we've dealt with some sort of mental health issue. And when the podcast idea came up was, hey, let's try to see if we can help somebody just by sharing our story. And I think in one of the first episodes, it must have been like 1, 2, or 3. I go, who the fuck? Somebody in fucking Arkansas. And sure as shit, somebody in Arkansas just reached out to us talking about the podcast and how it's helped them and how they dealt with things. And it's great. How could we in a million years have thought that we were going to reach that person if it wasn't for something like what we are doing right now?
I mean, like what you guys are talking about, I think the first thing that people need to understand is it's all right to feel the way you feel.
Yes.
But for how long have people been made to feel that it's not okay? That's why we talk about like breaking the stigma and talking about it. Or was there just such a misunderstanding in the generational shift that goes, suck it up, suck it up, suck it up, suck it up, because we've heard that in the military.
So this is going to sound weird, okay? Angel, we're both 40. We both graduated.
Old as fuck.
The same year. You graduated what?
Like,
you graduated what? 02 or 03?
It's like Kevin Hart. Damn.
You graduated what? 02 or 03? So it was Angel's junior year, it was my senior year. Second day of high school was 9/11.
Yep.
So
I was in school. Right down the road.
That was in math class.
I was in science, Miss Fox.
So, I mean, what I'm going to get at
Miss
is
Fox.
What does this
Angel
Fox
was,
say?
me and Angel were what, 17 probably back then?
Just about.
You had to learn to deal with something like that at a younger age. And I'm not saying like, oh, it's a good thing that happened because it taught me how to like deal with, horrible things happening. But I think a big part of like the younger people I work with, they've had limited life experiences. They've had, a different raising with the schools, with parents and all that stuff. So like
social media,
they don't deal with it the same way because some people, like I work with people that never had to deal with a problem in their life. Like everything's just smooth sailing. And it's like, okay, congratulations. How are you going to deal with this?
Well, that's where I think, again, like you go back to the societal thing we talked about, like all these kids grow up getting participation trophies. So they didn't have to feel like what it felt like to lose, to put all that effort in and not win.
Yeah.
And I think even something as simple as that truly affects the person as they get older.
You have the message? I want you to read that message before we get too off topic.
So the message, obviously I won't give a name or anything like that. So he messaged us saying that He's excited for the podcast. He found it, and he's about 3 episodes in. He is a cop in Arkansas and was a vet. Won't go again. I don't want to give too much.
Yeah, don't give too much. Because Arkansas's not that big, so they would probably figure it out.
So he goes on to say that going into being a police officer, of course, he had some trauma from the military, which again it's expected. But he actually gained much more, which to his surprise, after he became a police officer. He said that definitely being a cop, getting
which we touched on earlier about how much stuff you see being a police officer as opposed to being in the military.
But also in the military, I mean, I'm not a veteran, obviously, but like I
You're
would assume, yeah, I'm not. I'm just a dick.
only on Warzone.
Yeah,
You get medals on war.
yeah.
So because he continues to say that, in his words, he finally grew a pair, admitted to himself that he was going through some things, and started therapy, which is fucking awesome, right? This is something we've talked about continuously, is understanding. It's not demonizing yourself for going through things. It's not hiding it from yourself. It's not battling yourself. It's saying, okay, something is going on. Let me go what I need to do. Talk about it behind closed doors to coworkers, and it makes it okay. Going to seek a therapist. However else, having group chats, having group nights with the boys. Hey, listen, let's all sit down. We just kind of got bullshit, talk about some things, having get-togethers.
And not to mention, you start therapy. It doesn't mean you have to be in it forever.
Right.
I know that it definitely helped me out in the beginning, and now I don't even go, and I use a lot of those techniques now. But I think it's good, like maintenance and stuff, to go and talk to somebody and be able. But the good thing is I have you guys, that I can kind of do the same thing. And I'm
gonna start fucking charging you.
You
Actually,
better charge me.
So that
you pay Dan, you better pay me too.
He goes on to the therapy. The therapy is helping. Has made a huge difference, as well as going to the gym and running regularly has continued to improve his mental health, which is something again we talked about with Dr. Hillary, and then we've touched on going to the gym, going to jiu-jitsu, lifting, how pushing yourself physically, right, and doing physical workouts is huge towards your mental aspect.
There's clinical studies on this.
But Kyle, which we'll end up getting him on here, he is a huge testament to that. And he says all the time that one of the reasons that he is the way he is because of how often he goes to the gym. And
dude is ripped.
How his mental aspect, because he's seen a lot of shit. How he's able to maintain his mental health is by going to the gym. The gym is his therapy. But so getting this, the whole point, getting this message from this guy is, it's awesome. It's awesome hearing people's stories.
It's gratifying.
There's messages all the time. I'm shocked, that people really do reach out because
I love it.
I didn't think people would actually message us, but seeing like guys who are like that, military service members, cops in other states, like, what the hell? Where is Arkansas?
We've had
in the Midwest. I'm assuming
we've never had.
Is that wrong?
It's in Southeast.
Southeast. Where's Arkansas? You know where Arkansas is?
Next to Mississippi and Alabama.
He just tell you.
Next time we're gonna
also now I know. So you're gonna play me now because you.
No, I'm asking you. Did you know?
Because your dumbass didn't know where it was. So now you're trying to play me.
I just want to know if you know where it's at.
As much as you're on your goddamn phone, how about you Google it? I
was about to, but then they decided not to.
For it.
Jesus Christ.
Chris gets
we've had guys and we've had ladies reach out to us, and it's amazing again to be able to connect with people that we've never seen before, just simply by listening to stuff that we're talking about here, which is just sharing stories. We've always said we're not professionals.
Yeah.
We're not giving professional advice. I'm definitely not. I'm not going to advise anybody on anything.
I'm the last person.
You get what I'm saying? So it's just by Dan sharing his story, Chris sharing his story, Matthias sharing his story, people listening to that.
Hold on a second. Will we really call this the Southeast? This is next to this is above Louisiana, next to Dallas. That's not really Southeast, if you ask me.
Dallas isn't a state.
No, Dallas, Texas. But look, Arkansas right there, Dallas right here. So it's not. I'm not that horrible. I said Midwest. I'd consider that Midwest. To New York, or at least.
I hope we get messages about that.
I hope we do too. He's going to message us. He's going to
insult the entire state of Arkansas.
This guy's going to send me a fucking map with a little pin on it.
So obviously, we are not experts in mental health, and we're
or
not
geography.
or geography for that matter. Now, so now it's out there.
So we're going to be coming to
video
to the end of the podcast here in a few minutes.
Really? It went that
Already?
fast?
Wow. Well, it's 'cause
Damn,
Dan.
Dan.
It's easy to talk to Dan. That's why.
Damn, Daniel. No, you don't remember those?
Daniel, I remember, of course.
Yeah.
Dude, can I ask you a question before we start getting too close to the end? Like, we got a lot of really good information from you, but can I just ask you to maybe share anything?
How you cope?
Any like.
How you cope? What do you do for coping?
Here we go.
We know what you do, but I want
I would do
I go and have a good time with my friends.
I want you to share
No.
what you do
I
for
want
coping.
because he's given a lot of really good like clinical advice and professional advice. If this is our Dirty Dan, our boy, like our brother, like the person we love, and by the way, this guy is a legit chef. Some of the best food I've ever tasted in my life.
Yeah.
That beef Wellington, is that what it's called? Beef Wellington?
He's got good meat.
My
Dude.
my partner in the PD is a chef as well. We should get you guys to do
Dude,
cook
chef
off.
off.
and he's really good with
I'm in.
he's
I'm
really
fucking
good.
in.
He's really good with like shrimp. Like he does a lot of like
You do oxtail?
Yeah.
Oh, we should have
Dude,
an oxtail.
we should have
dude,
we should bring him in on the podcast and do a cook night.
a cook off.
Cook off.
It's called cook off.
Whatever. Cook on.
Huh?
What?
What? what?
Look, can you just tell people that don't know who Dan is, who our boy is, of something that maybe it took you a minute to like not get over, but it could be about anything. It could be about work. It could be about
How do you get into cooking, into chefing?
the chefing.
I got a job.
Huh?
I got
You
a
got a job? That's how
That's
how
how
you
you
got
cook?
into
I mean, I always cooked as a kid, but like I worked in restaurants.
I was going to say something like so wild, but I'll refrain.
yes.
Because it's
I'll
way harder
refrain-
for me to edit
I'll
a
refrain
video
from.
than it is
Yeah.
just audio.
I'll refrain
All of a sudden, you're
from.
gonna be smiling. And you're like,
You can't
they're all just
edit
laughing or
video.
something. Like, so what's
Oh, that
the
happens in
capital
movies
Arkansas?
too. That happens in movies all the time.
I'm doing like cuts, like, fade in, fade out. There's gonna be 1,000 of
You had
them.
Game of Thrones and they have
what
fucking coffee
epileptic
cups.
seizures
Fucking
is
We're
not
gonna,
happening?
we're gonna have to start putting little memes like the videos do. Like,
Yeah, that's what I mean. It's gonna like fade in, fade out. Yeah, it's gonna be
No, when I came back from college, a friend of mine was a chef, and I needed a job, so he hooked me up, and I was good at it. So he took me under his wing and spent a lot of extra time teaching me all of it.
For free.
Yeah, gave me
Damn.
textbooks. He expected me to read textbooks.
That's
I'd come in-
expensive.
I'd come into work, and he would, when you're done with your prep work, all right, let's do this, let's do that, and he took his time.
Culinary school is expensive and time consuming.
I was gonna go.
this guy was making pasta from scratch. He had his little machine, and he's sitting here
I suck at making pasta.
cranking sheets of pasta into like the fettuccine.
No, I made lasagna for you.
Oh, that was the
Pasta.
lasagna. Yeah, he made a lasagna from scratch. Everything. I was like, oh my god,
I don't like lasagna.
you don't like lasagna?
No, you never had the right one.
I'll
My
change
mom be
mine.
making a
Dude,
mean
this dude's lasagna.
I
It's
mean,
amazing.
lasagna's good. It's just not my. If I'm gonna eat pasta, I don't want like spaghetti.
It's not just pasta.
So I know somebody
It's
that's actually. Well, I'll refrain. It's about you, and then we'll talk about the lasagna because we're good at like just jumping off the ledge.
Yeah,
like we
yeah.
just fucking fly.
jumping off the ledge with a parachute.
Yeah.
We never need coquito.
Not right now. Not here. I may
I
have
don't
some.
even want to look at it.
Why is
Rough
that?
night, huh?
Well, tired.
Why is
Well,
that?
tired last
Rough
night,
night.
fellas. You went home. We stayed
All
out.
right, we went home.
Well,
We stayed out.
that was the smart thing to do because we knew what was happening.
I'd be up at 5 a.m.
Yeah.
In our defense, it wasn't like 9 o'clock at night. We left at like 11 o'clock at night.
So how late it was?
You liar. No.
No,
It was
I
like
got home
10:30.
at like 10.
No, it was like 10:30.
I got
see
home
what
at
that-
10:15, brother, man.
First it was 10. Now it's 10:15. Just extended another 15 minutes.
We
All right.
left. I left at 10.
you
I got
guys
home
were
at 10:15.
responsible
It's
adults.
15
Some of
minutes.
us were less responsible
It's
adults.
15 minutes away from where I was.
That's it.
Yeah.
I feel like it took me like 25 minutes to go home.
You weren't drinking enough.
If I don't
But
drink.
no, back to your question, Maddie, back to your question. The way I decompress is I spend time with my friends. I spend time with my family. That's how I decompress.
Where do you go?
Sometimes we go on vacation.
We have got.
We have
We have gone on vacation.
I recall that was your
We
40th
have
birthday
gone-
That
present,
was
by the
my
way.
40th birthday.
Yeah.
That is, you're right about that.
Yep.
Don't worry. I'm planning something for you. I'm just not going to tell you yet.
Are we going
But
back to
don't worry.
Vegas?
No. No.
That was fun.
Yes,
that
we
was
are.
a fun, that was a fun
Some of us
gambling.
are.
No. I'm not going back to Vegas yet. Doesn't mean I won't go
All right.
again.
Let's hope.
Yeah.
Just
Well,
not.
Dude, how much
just not yet.
fun did we have on the fucking table?
It was great.
Yeah.
Now back to you.
I travel a lot. I go away a lot. I have friends that live all over the country, so I try and visit them.
What's your favorite band?
Dave Matthews?
Yeah.
Showing my age again.
What's your age again?
That's good.
And he's a great.
And he's 4-0.
He is a great guitar player too, by the way.
He is.
Who is?
Dan. You know,
Really?
you know, every time we play Call of Duty,
Oh.
we sit there and playing.
This mother. We should know. We should know.
Slap the bass.
Slap the bass. Slap with the bruise.
I've heard that about you.
So you ever heard him play though?
No.
Dude, he's
Yeah, he's good.
Sure.
You played Dear Delilah for me? Hey, Dear Delilah, I was life in New York City.
pretty good. You should do karaoke.
We'll make this just for you.
Fuck no.
No, but that's how I decompress.
If I do karaoke, it'll be 50 Cent. Many Man.
We blasted that shit like 4 times on the way back
This
to
song,
Brooklyn.
Tequila.
Do your own music. Be original.
Oh, he did.
Yeah, he did. He played it on the way back. He's like, "You want to hear the
He
song?
heard a bunch of songs that he's never heard before.
You want to hear the song?"
How'd you get your job with that music?
But the best part is the song's going on and he's rapping with it. I was like, "Shit, I got like a little live concert going on right now." He's like,
For somebody that speaks Spanish, that's not how it sounded.
I mean, that sounded pretty good to me. I
It
was
sounded
like,
just like that.
I'm like,
Proper
did he
Spanish.
He knows I speak better than him.
Por favor.
He knows I speak better than him.
Stop shitting on me. All right, that lady was from Spain, okay?
That's for Spain. All right, so to close this out, Dan, we try and always end on a positive note. What
On the
is
spot.
what is a message that you would give to anybody listening, viewing, if you will, viewing? Just to work through these
You
things.
finally got to say it and me not correct
I
you.
know, I love it. What was the message that you would give, or a piece of advice that you'd give?
If you're going through anything, reach out before you let it make decisions you're not going to be able to take back.
Don't let it consume you.
Yeah.
Do not take a permanent solution to a temporary problem.
Yes. That's a big one. Like, if you have problems, talk to people.